The train station was heavy with movement, suitcases rolling, heels clacking, voices overlapping in a blur of goodbyes and beginnings. She stood still in the chaos. A girl in a pale blue dress that didn't match the heat of August. Her fingers clutched the handle of a small, olive-green suitcase, its leather edges worn and peeling, the kind of wear that doesn't come from travel, but from holding on too long. The cracked watch on her wrist ticked loud in her ears, though the second hand no longer moved. She kept her gaze fixed on platform 4. Not because she was waiting for someone, but because that's where she had last seen him, laughing. With her. Her best friend. His hand had been on her back in that small, familiar way. The way that used to belong to only one woman. The girl blinked, once, slow. The overhead announcement echoed, unintelligible. She didn't move. A child ran past her, tugging a red balloon. The ribbon brushed her thigh. She flinched. Memories were strange that way, soft things sometimes stung the most. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. One buzz. Then another. Then silence. She didn't check it. She already knew what it would say. Where are you? Let's talk. Please don't ruin this. A gust of wind caught her hair, lifting it across her face. She didn't brush it back. The station smelled like metal, rain, and something bittersweet, like perfume left too long in a drawer. She inhaled deeply, as if to steady the tremble in her hands. The cracked watch shifted on her wrist. She turned it around so the face was against her skin. Time had no business watching her right now. There were white flowers wilting inside the suitcase. A veil folded so tightly it looked like a napkin. A letter, sealed but unsent. She tilted her head. Platform 4 was empty now. Just rails and dust and the echo of something that once promised forever. She stepped back, the weight of the suitcase suddenly nothing. In her mind, she saw it all again, his tux, her betrayal, the dress hanging in the back of her closet like a ghost who hadn't been invited. A slow smile crept to the edge of her lips, sharp and soft all at once. She whispered, barely loud enough for even herself to hear, "Let's see how it feels." The next train pulled in, brakes screeching. She didn't flinch. And she didn't look back. The train rumbled beneath her feet, and she gripped the pole with one hand, the suitcase wedged between her ankles. People came and went, mothers with toddlers, couples whispering inside each other's shoulders, old men with folded newspapers. She remained. Alone. Her eyes found a family near the window. The boy waved a crayon drawing at his father, who laughed and kissed the top of his head. The kind of scene she'd once sketched in the corners of her schoolbooks, right beneath her name, Aania. The suitcase shifted slightly as the train turned. She looked down at it. It had once been her father's. He used to say, "Always carry something of your own, even if it's falling apart. That way, no one can claim you owe them the ground you stand on." She was 13 when he died. And still, this battered thing had followed her, to hostels, jobs, heartbreaks. It had sat quietly through every goodbye she hadn't prepared for. Just like now. Her phone buzzed again. She powered it off without checking. Through the window, rain began to tap gently on the glass. Aania pressed her forehead to the cool pane. Her reflection stared back, eyes tired, lips set, that single curl at her temple still refusing to stay tucked. The dress was still in the suitcase. Ivory, simple, without lace. She hadn't picked it to impress. Just to belong. Because once, she believed love was about choosing someone, and being chosen back. But not anymore. Now she knew love could lie. It could sound like forever and taste like betrayal. She blinked quickly as a lump rose in her throat. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a man sitting across the aisle. Early 30s, maybe. Clean collar, calm presence. He wasn't looking at her directly. Just every now and then. Not curious. Not flirtatious. Just aware. Like someone who'd seen too much pain to stare at it directly anymore. He said nothing. And somehow, that silence wrapped around her better than any words. The train slowed. Her stop was near. Her fingers brushed the watch hidden beneath her sleeve. The cracked glass pressed into her skin like a reminder, this pain was real. And it would pass. Aania stood as the train hissed to a halt. The suitcase felt heavier again. She stepped forward, then paused. The man across the aisle met her eyes for just a second. He smiled, small, unsure. She didn't return it. But she didn't look away either. For one breathless moment, neither moved. Then, without a word, she stepped off the train, into the rain, into whatever came next. The rain had thickened into a quiet storm, the kind that didn't scream, but whispered like regret. Aania stood under the glass awning outside the station. The wind was sharp, sending chills through the fabric of her blue dress. She hadn't thought this far ahead, just away. Away from the aisle, the vows, the betrayal in a white dress that wasn't hers. She held the suitcase tighter, as if it might carry her instead. Footsteps behind her. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just there. She didn't turn. You forgot this. His voice was gentle, unfamiliar. She glanced over her shoulder. It was the man from the train. He held her cracked umbrella. She hadn't realized it was missing. Thanks, she said quietly, reaching for it. Their hands touched, briefly. His palm was calloused. Fingernails chipped. The knuckles bore faint scars, not from violence, but repetition. Labor. And his shoes, mud-stained, soles thinning, one lace torn and tied too tightly to hide it. A man going somewhere, but not easily. Aania studied him again. Not conventionally handsome. Just real. Something grounded in him, like he'd been through a storm and hadn't dried off yet. He gave a faint nod, about to walk away, then hesitated. She noticed the corner of a photo peeking from his wallet, slightly crumpled. A woman, maybe. Or a child. She couldn't tell. She asked before she could stop herself. Someone waiting for you? His jaw tensed. No. Not anymore. Thunder cracked in the distance. They stood in silence as the sky rippled above them. Aania shivered, but not from the cold. She didn't know this man. Didn't even know his name. But something about him, his silence, his eyes, the broken look he wore so well, it all felt uncomfortably familiar. Like looking into a mirror smeared with rain. He looked at her suitcase. Running or returning? Neither, she said. I think I'm just rewriting. He didn't laugh. Didn't ask. Just nodded, like he understood. Aania's heart twisted. She was supposed to leave. To find a hotel, change her name, disappear from every guest list. But her feet wouldn't move. The umbrella hung between them, unopened. She looked at him again, really looked. Was this a stranger fate had placed in her path? Or just another story waiting to break her? He finally spoke. Can I walk with you for a while? She hesitated. For a moment too long. Rain traced the curve of her cheek. She didn't answer. Just started walking. And he followed. They walked without speaking, the stranger and the girl in the pale blue dress. The city opened around them, neon lights in puddles, taxi horns, strangers wrapped in their own destinations. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, soft but relentless. Aania paused at the corner of an old bookstore, closed, its windows fogged over from the inside. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass, dress clinging damply to her body, hair curled against her jawline, suitcase dirted from the drag through gravel. It was all too much. "I don't even know where I'm going," she whispered, more to herself than him. "You don't have to," he replied, voice low. "Some roads only appear once your hands let go." She turned away. The words were too gentle, too close to her breaking point. He stopped walking too. That's when she saw it. The watch. Her father's cracked watch, dangling from his fingers. She blinked. I left it in the station." He nodded. "Fell from your wrist when you reached for the umbrella." He held it delicately, as if it might bleed. Aania reached out and took it back, her hand trembling slightly. The glass had cracked further. She hadn't noticed. "Some people carry more than just bags," he said, his gaze soft but unflinching. "They carry silence. Grief. Names they don't speak out loud." A car passed behind them, its headlights sweeping over her face. She squinted, holding the suitcase tighter. Across the street, a couple laughed too loudly. The woman stared at Aania for a second too long, then turned, whispered something behind her palm. Another car honked. A shopkeeper pulling down shutters paused, looked at them, looked away. Even strangers seemed to know. She was the woman who'd almost been a bride. The one who'd been left. Or worse, replaced. Aania stepped backward. "I can't do this," she said, voice cracking. "I was supposed to get married today. And instead I'm standing in the middle of a street with a suitcase and a stranger who..." She stopped herself. He didn't flinch. The silence between them was raw and wide. Like a wound, not yet stitched. She looked down at the watch in her palm. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, impulsively, she slipped it into the side pocket of the suitcase. Buried, but not gone. Her breath hitched. She turned, took one step, then stopped. One last look. He hadn't moved. Neither had the rain. She didn't go back. But she didn't keep walking either. She just stood. And let it ache. The next morning came slow and gray. Light barely spilled through the curtains of the tiny guesthouse room she'd taken for the night. Aania sat curled near the window, legs pulled to her chest, suitcase beside her like a silent companion. She hadn't unpacked. Instead, she stared at the watch in her hand. The second hand had finally stopped ticking completely, just like time had, the moment she saw him with her best friend. Her stomach twisted. She reached into the suitcase and pulled out a folder, the job application she'd been too scared to send. A last resort, really. The kind of position that could change everything if she dared to believe she was still worth choosing. It was a publishing company. Reputable. Expanding. She'd read every interview, memorized the founder's name. And now, curious, maybe reckless, she searched the name online again. Her fingers froze. There he was. The man from the train. His name printed in sharp serif under his photograph, Zayn Amir. Founder. CEO. She stared at the screen. Not just kind eyes and broken shoelaces. Not just a stranger in the rain. He was the decision maker. He was the gatekeeper to the future she thought she had to earn on her knees. Her breath caught. The watch, her father's watch, lay between them yesterday like a symbol of quiet pain. But now, she wasn't sure whose story it really belonged to anymore. She remembered how he'd held it, like something fragile, like something known. And then she saw it. A line in one of his interviews. Bolded. Some things carry more than time, they carry memory. My daughter gave me a cracked watch once, told me to stop trying to fix everything that's broken. She died the next year. I still keep it. Her heart skipped. He hadn't been returning her watch yesterday. He'd been giving his back. She carried silence. He carried ghosts. Aania stood suddenly. The room tilted slightly with the rush of blood. There was no pretending anymore. No hiding behind heartbreak. This wasn't a stranger in the street. This was a man tangled in her story. Or maybe she in his. Either way, there was no turning back now. The dress remained folded in the suitcase. The veil still untouched. But she grabbed the application, shoved it into her bag, and headed out. She didn't text him. Didn't call. But she walked into the glass building that bore his name. And signed her name at the front desk. No longer the girl who was left. Now the woman who just stepped into the fire. The train station again. Same chaos, same noise. But this time, she wasn't standing still. Aania walked with purpose, her olive green suitcase rolling behind her, scuffed, scarred, but no longer something she clung to. Just something she carried. Her cracked watch was gone. She'd left it on his desk that morning, neatly wrapped in a soft gray cloth. No note. No explanation. Just the truth, resting in silence between them. She had expected him to follow. He didn't. But now, hours later, footsteps echoed behind her. She didn't turn. I told you, Zion said gently, his voice like dusk, I don't chase what was never mine. She turned then, only halfway. Then why are you here? He exhaled slowly, his eyes older than yesterday. I hired you. That's all. Aania's heart cracked open again, not from heartbreak, but from clarity. You don't want me, she said, not as accusation, but understanding. Zion looked down, then reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a new watch. Not cracked. Not gold. Just simple, clean, precise. I bought this last year, he said. Meant to wear it when I finally let her go. Her throat tightened. But then, he continued, stepping closer, you showed up, dragging that suitcase, carrying everything you weren't saying. And for a moment, I thought, maybe I wasn't the only one trying to walk away from ghosts. She looked at the watch in his hand. The new one. The one he never wore. You reminded me of her, he admitted, eyes soft but distant. Not in the way you speak. In the way you hold back. The way your silence takes up space. He held out the watch to her. This belongs to someone who's ready to move forward. It's not mine anymore. Aania didn't take it. Instead, she stepped back. I don't need time to move forward, she said. I just need to stop waiting for someone to choose me first. His lips parted, like he might speak, then didn't. She turned. Walked away. Past the platform where he once stood. Past the bench where she almost broke. Past everything that used to hold her still. And as she stepped onto her train, she dropped the cracked watch, wrapped in gray cloth, into the donation box near the entrance. Not as trash. As closure. The train began to move. The city blurred past her window. A couple embraced 2 rows ahead. A child pressed stickers onto the seat. Life kept happening. And she was part of it again. Not the woman left behind. Not the replacement bride. Just Aania. Enough. The watch didn't tick anymore. But she did. Not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever. Weeks had passed. The city was quieter now, or maybe she had just stopped listening to the noise. Aania walked alone through the park near her new apartment, boots brushing against fallen leaves, hands deep in her coat pockets. The air smelled like earth and fading summer. She had changed her number. Not out of spite, just peace. The guest list from the wedding that never happened was gone. The dress had been donated. And the suitcase, the olive green one, sat now in the corner of her room, empty. Not discarded, just resting. Inside her bedside drawer, beneath an old scarf and a fading photograph of her father, lay the cracked watch. Still. Silent. She hadn't tried to fix it. She never would. Some things aren't meant to tick again. She passed a flower vendor by the road. A little girl offered her a single white daisy. No charge, the child whispered with a grin, just because. Aania took it. Smiled. The wind caught her hair, and for once, she let it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't check it. Not immediately. She sat on a wooden bench overlooking the lake, same city, new view. Her reflection shimmered on the water's surface, not flawless, but clear. A voice echoed in her mind, his voice, from that night in the rain. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. She thought she understood it now. Because silence isn't always sadness. Sometimes, it's strength. Sometimes, it's survival. She didn't know where Zion was now. Maybe still behind that desk. Maybe chasing some other version of closure. But she no longer needed his goodbye to begin again. Aania brushed the daisy across her cheek, soft and alive. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition. She whispered it to the wind, unsure if it belonged to her or someone else. But it felt right. Standing up, she walked away from the bench. No wedding. No revenge. No dramatic ending. Just her, finally choosing herself. There would be more heartbreaks. Maybe even love again. But she had already survived the worst kind of loss, the one where you lose yourself. Now she was found. Still healing. Still becoming. And somewhere between forgiveness and forgetting, she realized, some goodbyes don't need doors. They just need silence and a soft place to set the weight down.